we'd have a big awards banquet at the end of the season. And we usually had 300 or 400 people there, easy, 500 people. And it was the team, their families, grandparents, anybody who wants to come. So we'd have this big dinner and, some individual recognition, team recognition. If we won the national championship, everybody got a gold medal, whether they went to the tournament as varsity or not, everybody was recognized. I had this one player come up to me. His name is John, great kid. It was his senior year. And he comes up to me and says, "Coach, I played for you for 4 years. I never made the varsity, never was in a varsity game, never even got to suit up with the varsity." And, that's kind of a special privilege. You go and you suit and you have that whole experience in the locker room, the pregame talks and halftime talks and all that. And he says, I never had that experience, never got to experience it. But I want you to know that these 4 years have been the best years of my life. And this is what I learned from you and the team. They went boom, 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 boom.
So that was just a clip from our conversation with Larry Gelwix, and he was telling a powerful story of just one athlete's experience in his program. And I know there's many, many more like that. I think that story of that player's experience, it captures something I believe we want for every player on our team. A great experience where they enjoy each other, they enjoy the struggle, the challenges, and they grow through that process. Now today, Larry's going to share some of the secrets behind that success, including what's important now, and how that helped him to not only win a lot of games, but impact lives and keep his personal priorities in order. Welcome back to the Coaching Culture Podcast. If you missed last week's episode, our conversation with myself, JP Nurbin, and my co-host, Nate Sanderson, and the winningest coach in America, Larry Gelwix, I highly recommend you flick back and listen to episode 191. Hopefully now you are already a subscriber, not only to this podcast, but you've gone over to the thriveonchallenge.com where you use the link in the details of this episode to subscribe to the weekly newsletter where we share our notes from each week's episode. If you haven't, well, you're missing out on some things that could help you become a more transformational coach and build a better culture. So be sure to subscribe. Now, let's get back to our conversation with Coach Larry Gelwix. So, Coach, I actually first heard about you not from the film Forever Strong, but from one of my favorite books, Essentialism by Greg McKeown. Greg was also on the podcast, and he shared your philosophy of what's important now, and how important that mentality or philosophy is not just for teams, but for all leaders, for everybody in their life. And so can you tell us a little bit about what's important now philosophy from your own perspective?
Well, thank you for asking. What's important now is one of 5 championship strategies that we taught and mentored on the team. Those 5 are: number 1, we, not me. Number 2, don't play with snakes. That's a great one. Absolutely hysterical. Number 3, attitude and effort is everything. Attitude and effort is the muscle of resilience. Number 4, what's important now. And number 5, focus on the final score. And so you don't take one of them in isolation. These are interdependent also. But what's important now, it's like a talk I would have with the team at the beginning of the season. I say, now, fellas, there's 2 roads that we can take. One goes to the left, one goes to the right. If we go to the left, and there's nothing wrong with either one of them, but if we go to the left, we will be kind of a social team, a fun team. We'll have lots of pool parties and pizza, and maybe we'll practice once a week, and we'll go out and have some fun. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if the other road is we will be a highly disciplined competition team, either road is okay. Nothing wrong with it. But it's a very different road. And there's something called the law of the price tag. There is a price tag to being a champion or going after a national championship, having a winning team. And here's what the price tag is. And I would talk about the discipline that's required on and off the field, the personal training. They had personal training outside of practice. We could spend our practice in fitness training, or we could spend it in teaching. And so they had, well, of course, we did some fitness training in practice. And I'll tell you about one of them that is legendary. But the real focus was teaching. And I said, there are two different roads. This one is tough, and there is a price tag you will have to pay. You will bend, but you will not break. There will be days when you just don't think you can go any further. So let's make a decision right now. And I'm okay either way with it. Well, I knew what they would pick, and they always did, but they have to have skin in the game. It has to be their decision. And they said, Coach, we want to be a champion. And I said, do you really understand what you're saying? Do you understand what road this will take you through? Do you really grasp that you're going to have to do hard things? Yeah, Coach, we're willing to do it. You're sure? Okay. And you see, that way, they have taken ownership. They have chosen the road that they want to take in this. I'll tell you about this one activity that was one of my favorites, one of the greatest teaching moments that pulled us out of so many games. It was called the fun run. Well, they would come to practice in early March. We'd have our January, February invitation only indoors, but everybody would come, and at the end of practice, we'd send them on like a 10-minute run. Now, our school is next to a city park with hills and valleys, and and the captains take them on a run. They come back in 10 minutes, and most of them, and it's hard. They'll stop, push up, push up, push up, and then running up the hills and running through the park, sprinting, jogging, everything together as a pack. And after 10 or 15 minutes on those very first runs, they come back pretty gassed. It's early in the season. Well, as the season would go on, we would add 5 minutes to it. It became 20 minutes, then 30 minutes, and 45, to the point, and they all knew this, we would get to an hour of intense activity, pushing themselves and going up the hills with someone their own size and weight on their back, like piggyback, going up the hills and running and sprinting. And they would come back, and we'd come back on the field. And rugby fields have goalposts 100 meters apart. And I'd stand at one of the goalposts. They come in, and they're so proud of themselves. They have gone 1 hour, something that they weren't sure that they could do. And as they get there, and you're never on your knees, you're never bent over, you're standing up, hands on your hips or at your sides. We always say, never show pain to the other team, never give them anything. And they're so proud of themselves. And I'd say, fellas, do you have any more gas in the tank? And they say, yeah, Coach. And they say, sprint down to the goalpost and sprint back. And they'd do it. They thought they were done, but there was more gas in the tank, more fuel to burn. And what this taught them is, you can be in a game, you can be in a situation in life, emotionally, spiritually, physically, where you think you're out of gas, but you got more gas in the tank. And those type of lessons is what I think is a big part of our success, a big part of it up here mentally. We can do hard things. We don't quit. We got more gas in the tank. And I think it's part of who we are, how we play the game.
What you kind of described is a little bit of, you have this shared goal, which they have been a part of choosing and selecting.
Yes.
Yes, we want the road to the championship. but they're also combining that with this shared suffering on the rugby pitch, on the hills, and they're doing something together. But I love how just even that small tweak. I remember just myself as a coach being on the court. Here we go, next one, coach. We're tired. No, telling them to push through. Where you're sitting back and just saying, guys, do you have anything left? And you keep talking about this idea of autonomy and giving them the choice and kind of just putting it on them. So that's really powerful.
What we wanted them to do is take ownership first of themselves and second of the team. You've got to have that self-discipline on and off the field. We had a team motto or slogan that we would talk about and repeat all the time. No regrets. Now, no regrets does not mean no mistakes. We have and we will make mistakes, but it means no unresolved mistakes. We try to fix the mistakes that we have. It's like in practice, we never got on the players yelling and screaming at them. Oh, we could be very intense, but no swearing. My grandmother could run faster than you. It was never personal. But it was like, if you make a mistake in practice, that's okay. But we will stay in practice till you do it right. And it becomes a habit. It becomes a reflex. And so if we have to stay here all night, we'll stay here all night. But we're not going to yell and scream at you for dropping the ball. We're going to find out, well, how do we catch the ball? And I think that's part of it too. No regrets. And when their focus is on the team and their best effort, and they're not worried about getting yelled or torn apart. I've seen players on other teams just crucified by coaches in front of their friends, in front of their teammates, in front of the fans at the game. And I want to go over and punch the guy out. I don't, but I want. I said, you're destroying this kid. Now, this is not mamby-pamby, let's hold hands and sing kumbaya. We are a very intense, highly competitive team, but we really work hard at maintaining personal dignity. There's a time and place to discipline a player, but you do it in a way that's fair. And you know what I used to say to the players when we'd have a discipline issue? We'd review it, his behavior or what the situation was. And I might say, if his name was Nate, I'd say, now, Nate, we'd review the situation. Is there anything that I've said to you that is inaccurate or unfair? Anything? No, coach. And I said, okay, now I want your focus because it's fair and it's correct. I want your focus to be on you and your behavior, not on me, the coach, not on the other people, not on anybody else but yourself and the choices that you could have made. And if there was a consequence that I had to impose, I want you to focus not on why am I suspended from the team for a couple of weeks? Why am I dropped from the starting lineup? I want because it's accurate and it's fair. What we've talked about, what I've reported to you, I want your focus to be on yourself and the choices that you can make. What great learning opportunities, but you take them away from this victim mentality. Coach sucks. That's so. No, it was fair. It was me. And that had a great salient effect upon the team.
Larry, I want to follow up on that a little bit. When you watch the movie, one of the things that stands out is the conversations in the lawn chairs. And it's left a little bit mysterious in the movie. You kind of see it, but there's not a lot of explanation. And I think you could easily walk away from that and think the lawn chair was confession. But I have a feeling that there was a lot more to it than that. You want to explain the conversations and the purpose behind that?
I say the movie is amazingly accurate, except for two things. One of them is the lawn chair.
I'm so disappointed. I'm just gonna if this is all just a lie.
No, JP. I did have the lawn chair. I did. Let me tell you how it happened. In 2002, during the season, I had a heart attack, and it was a serious heart attack. And I was in the cardiac ICU. In fact, I flatlined twice in the hospital. I was a goner. And that's another story for another day, because there were angels in that room. Nevertheless, I survived it. And I remember when it was during season, I was leaving the hospital. Of course, they always push you in a wheelchair out to the car. And the doctor says, now you need to go home for a couple of weeks and rest. I said, what do you mean go home? I'm going to practice this afternoon. I've got a team to coach. My wife, Kathy, is going, you're an idiot. You're going to leave me a widow. And I said, well, you're right. I am an idiot, but I'm not going to leave you a widow. And so I went to practice, and the doctor said, well, listen, take a lawn chair, sit there, and you just got to watch it. Well, I did that. I took a lawn chair to practice, and I sat there. I couldn't take it. I'm a very hands-on coach. And it lasted 2 days. I sat in that lousy lawn chair, and finally I could take it no longer. And I'm back on the field coaching. Now, I will tell you the basis behind that lawn chair is from the very beginning, I had one-on-ones with the players. We might sit in the stands. And after that heart attack in 2002, I did have a lawn chair, and we would sit in lawn chairs after practice, and we would talk. And we would usually not talk so much about rugby as we'd talk about life. And it wasn't Father Confessor. It was JP. How you doing, son? You know, how's school? You know, how are things at home with your parents? And just they would talk about what was going on in their life, because there was a trust, and they knew I wasn't going to call their parents or the police or something like that. Now, we also had our rugby talks where we do player evaluations, which were very straightforward. I told you before, you can't throw fluff. You can't say, oh, you're the best ever. But we always worked out a plan of what they had to do. And we would measure that plan. A very wise man, Thomas Monson, said, when performance is measured, performance improves. When performance is measured and reported, the rate of improvement accelerates. And I believe that. And so the lawn chair was true, but it was the basis. The problem in the movie, guys, is that's all that they have me doing. You know how they got the storyline? They got together focus groups of players, like 10 at a time, from all the different decades. And they didn't interview them. They just turned on, they had a mic, kind of a boom mic, and a camera to record it. And all they said was, tell us stories. What was it like to play for this coach? What was it like to play for this team? And the boys started telling stories. And that was one of the stories in 2002 when Coach started bringing lawn chairs to practice. You know, it was interesting too, as the screenwriter, David Plyler, put together the initial screenplay, there were so many stories that had to be included. It was a 4.5-hour movie. Well, of course, you can't do a 4.5-hour movie. So it's cut this. And so how can we cut this? How can we cut that? This is what the studio was saying. These stories are so good. But that was one of the stories that made the cut and stayed in the movie. What's the movie? An hour and a half or something like that now. You know, I said to them when they made the movie, I don't want you making up a bunch of stuff. I don't want to walk out of the theater embarrassed. And so I thought they did a wonderful job on the movie. But the players will say about Coach sitting in a lawn chair all the time, they go, no, that's not how it was.
All right. Well, as long as we are bursting Hollywood myths here, I got to ask another question, and one I think really is relevant to a lot of our coaches. In the movie, the main character, kind of goes through this story arc of hitting rock bottom and challenging the team standards and facing some consequences for his behavior. And I think one of the things that just struck me as a coach, because we can all put ourselves in that situation, and have flashbacks of, I remember that attitude. I've seen that entitlement before. I've coached that kid before. But one of the things I think is so powerful in the way the movie is portrayed is your unwillingness to give up on that kid, and the willingness, at least in the movie, to maybe even sacrifice a win or a winning streak in order to benefit the players or the team or an individual player. And I think it's so hard for us to think in those terms sometimes. I wonder if you could just speak a little bit to your mindset when there is a player like that. And I don't know if that's a combination of different stories woven into one character, or if that's really what actually happened. But can you just talk about sort of your role and the way you thought about players that would lead you to just continue to stay with them, as we saw in that story?
One of the 5 championship strategies, Nate, is to focus on the final score. And I've said to a lot of parents, take the long view. It's not where you are at the moment, but the direction in which you're moving that really makes the difference. You don't have to give up. And as far as sacrificing games, that was a decision I made in a preseason game. But it was more than just the player. It was giving other players opportunities to perform, knowing that if we put all of our varsity in there, we'd win the game. You see this in many sports in preseason games, playing everybody, even though it's going to cost you a win, because the learning goes to your long-term goals. And I think when it comes to interpersonal relationships, it's focus on the final score. Take the long view. See them maybe as they don't see themselves. You want a child thinking, what do my parents, what does my coach, what does my pastor or rabbi see in me that maybe I don't see in myself right now? It's painting a vision, showing a roadmap of what they can become. There is a diagram that I use with the team, and I'm going to have to paint a picture with words of it. Imagine in the lower left-hand corner, you or a person that you're working with, all right? And in the upper right-hand corner, there's a goal. Now, to achieve any goal, there's a series of steps that you go up, things that you have to do. So draw a staircase from the person up to the goal, whatever it may be. Then I draw a line over the top, kind of like an arch. Focus on the final score. And I draw another arch underneath, win, what's important now. And so here's what it is. You fellas all have a GPS, don't you? In your phone, your car. You put in a destination that you're going to, and that's your focus. I want to get to this destination, 123 Main Street. Well, as soon as you hit start or go or directions, 123 Main Street disappears, although it's still visible. But it's not the focus. It's take Highway 41 for 2.5 miles, exit on 3rd Street, go 3 blocks, turn left on Taylor Street. In other words, it has all these different steps of what you want to go. And then when you get to 123 Main Street, boom, it comes back up on the screen. That's the way life is. And so as you work with this, think of that staircase, and while we keep a focus on the final score, it's what Steve Covey, the great leadership guru, said, start with the end in mind. That's what we do with the team, and that's what we do in helping our kids and players grow up. But while we start with the end in mind on the goal, we ask ourselves, what is important now? What is the single most important thing that I can do to start the journey to the goal? And that is the first step. This is the single most important thing to do, what is that first step on the staircase? And then as you achieve that, you continue to go up the staircase. What we find is that some people will race up the staircase, even skipping steps. Others will jog, some will walk, some will not even try. There are some people will go 3 steps up and 2 steps back, or 2 steps up and 3 steps back. But if you can help that player or that son or daughter or that co-worker or whoever you're have an interpersonal relationship with, figure out, start with the end in mind, focus on the final score. What do you want to do? Well, what is the next step? What is important now? And then you are measuring them, just as that quote from Thomas Monson, when performance is measured, performance improves. When performance is measured and reported, the rate of improvement accelerates. Why is it in the weight room or on the track we are keeping track of measurements, recording what our time is, what our lift is? Because when it's reported, it improves. And that's one of the most critical things that you can do. That staircase is you have a child failing in school and they want to graduate. Well, don't beat them up over graduation. That's the goal. What's the next thing you need to do? Okay, you need to go to class. All right, let's do that. Let's just start with going to class. We're not going to sweat the other stuff. What's the next step? Well, you got to do your homework. All right, let me help you with your homework. And so it is with a rugby player or anything in life. What is the next step? What is important now? Focus on the final score. And here's the thing that is tough, particularly with parents, is some kids, some people, some coworkers, some players won't go up the staircase. And there is a time and a place where you just have to cut them loose, but you do it with dignity.
I want to get you out of here on this last question about kind of another aspect of your life that you haven't mentioned much. And I really saw this in the documentary on your life where they're interviewing your daughters that have clearly turned out to be great people and also still love you, and think the world of you. You do so much. You've got your own business and the travel agency business, and you do this Highland rugby team, and you were all in on that. And I think a lot of the things that coaches struggle with is the cost. And you've mentioned the cost. The cost of pursuing greatness, sometimes we feel like it is going to cost us in that family life. It's going to cost us in those relationships with our children. Do you have any advice on ways that you were able to still be a great father, not just a great rugby coach?
Thank you. Kathy and I have 5 wonderful children, 3 daughters and 2 sons. Both boys played on the rugby team. It's a tough balance, isn't it? Because you can put so much time in and your family is always there. I will say this, it would have been impossible for me to do what I did without my wife, Kathy. She was the great facilitator and she made things possible. She's the most amazing woman. I think that there has to be a purposeful plan. You have to make emotional deposits in the family bank account with your children and your family. I would, as the kids were growing up, I made it a habit of sitting on their bed, even when they're 3 and 4 years old, and just talking to them about the day. Talk about what they want, stuff, and making sure that Kathy and I had date night. You have it. It doesn't happen. It's so easy to put those that you love the most at the end of the line because they will always be there. And so for me, I understood that all of us are given a lot of time in life. We're given a measure of time. For some, it's a very short time, a few years, a few days, maybe. Others, it's a long, long time and a lot in between. But at the end of the day, I think it's what type of husband and father, family man, for me, that I want to be. And I think I understood this. And so I tried to make those emotional deposits in the bank account with my wife and my children, because there are times in our own employment, and certainly for coaching sports, where an inordinate amount of time is required. And if you can draw upon the bank account, the emotional bank account, if it has a positive balance, you can make withdrawals. But if you are emotionally bankrupt, you've got nothing to draw upon. And I've seen it happen where divorces, families split up, kids feel that the team was more important than you or me. Just on a personal note, I'm a cancer patient. It was diagnosed in 2012. The last 2 years have been pretty good news, but it brought a very keen sense of mortality of my life, and I still go to the Huntsman Cancer Hospital. But it's helped give me a focus that I think I've had all along, that my time with my family is so important. I remember a neighbor of mine was general counsel for a international company, big time stuff. And he said to me one day, said, Larry, I've been to a lot of retirement dinners, and they all say the same thing. I wish I'd spent more time with my family. Not one of them ever said, I wish I'd gone to work earlier. I wish I'd stayed later, as they face their retirement. So I think finding the balance, JP and Nate, is establishing an emotional bank account, I'll call it, making regular deposits so that you have something to draw upon, and keeping your priority really is, I think, your family. If you're a person with a faith-based life, it's that relationship with God. That is the priority, and you keep that as a focus, and everything else seems to fall in line.
All right, a huge thanks to Coach Larry Gelwix. Honestly, I feel so special to have had a conversation with one of my heroes. Check out the movie Forever Strong. There's also a documentary called No Regrets on Vimeo about his life, and you can go over to LarryGelwix.com if you'd like to get in touch with him. Just a heads up, in our next few episodes, Nate and I are going to do a deep dive on culture identity, why it's important, and how to create it. So be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss it.